It was a Saturday morning when the letter showed up, folded, taped to my dock railing, sealed with an HOA logo that tried too hard to look official. Notice of violation, unauthorized watercraft mooring in bold letters. It told me I had 72 hours to move my pontoon boat or face daily fines of $200 in accordance with Misty Shores, HOA Lake Ordinance 5C. I nearly spit out my coffee laughing. See, I wasn't some guy who just dragged a boat up and left it floating in front of a borrowed dock. That lake, the one the HOA was trying to regulate, I owned it, not part of it, not the dock, not just my stretch of shoreline, the whole damn lake, all 55 acres of it, water, bottom and banks. Bought it clean 5 years ago from the original property developers who'd split off the lake rights before ever building the neighborhood around it. I knew one day it would come in handy. I just didn't think that day would start with a soggy violation note and a power-hungry HOA board that didn't know who they were messing with. Their president, of course, was someone who could only be described as pure HOA-grade nightmare fuel. Her name was Sherry Hollowell, and she ran Misty Shores like a suburban dictatorship. Every mailbox had to match. Every lawn had to be within a quarter-inch of HOA-approved height. And God forbid you use the wrong mulch color. She once fined a neighbor $300 for using non-compliant red bark instead of the HOA-mandated brown. She didn't know me well. I kept to myself. Just a quiet guy with a small house at the end of a gravel drive, tucked behind the tree line on the east bank. I paid no dues, signed no covenants, and I kept the deed to the lake framed in my office. So when Sherry's letter threatened to escalate enforcement measures if I didn't remove my own boat from my own water, I didn't get mad. I smiled, because it was time to remind this HOA who was actually in charge of Misty Shores Lake. Before I responded, I did a little recon. Turns out, Misty Shores HOA had recently started something they called the Golden Reel Fishing Club, a members-only group that held weekend tournaments, charged residents a $100 annual lake activity fee, and operated a handful of floating docks and mooring points near the center of the lake. None of them had permits. None of them had ever asked for my permission. They assumed the lake was theirs simply because they were near it, and they'd been pocketing fees for 2 years. Now that was going to be a problem, a very expensive one. I waited until Monday morning to respond, not with a phone call, not with an email, but with a certified letter printed on thick ivory paper, neatly folded, sealed with a wax stamp that read, "Property Owner." It was addressed to the Misty Shores HOA Board. Here's what it said: "To whom it may concern, this correspondence is in reference to the notice posted on my dock regarding my boat's unauthorized mooring. I write to clarify a fundamental legal oversight on your part. I am the sole deeded owner of Misty Shores Lake. The body of water, its banks, and all submerged property lines were purchased in full in 2018. This includes exclusive rights to recreational use, mooring, and shoreline access. As such, your citation is invalid. Furthermore, your organization's Golden Reel Fishing Club is operating without legal access to the lake. The presence of multiple floating structures, moorings, and fee-based activities constitutes trespassing and commercial use of private property. You are hereby ordered to remove all unauthorized docks, vessels, and signage from Misty Shores Lake within 7 calendar days. Failure to comply will result in legal action for trespass, unlawful use, and damages. Respectfully, Nathan Hale, deeded owner, Misty Shores Lake. 3 days later. Sherry showed up at my gate in a pastel pantsuit and fire in her eyes. I was out trimming hedges when I saw her BMW crawl up the drive like it was allergic to gravel. She stepped out holding my letter like it was a dead squirrel. "You can't be serious," she said. "You don't own the lake." I wiped my hands on a towel and opened my phone, tapped a saved PDF, turned the screen toward her. Deed, title, parcel maps. Verified through the county. I own every inch of water you've been selling access. 2. She stared at it, blinking. This must be a clerical mistake. The lake was supposed to transfer to the HOA once Phase 2 of the development was complete. I shrugged. It didn't. Developer sold it to me, quietly. Clean title, no encumbrances, you never checked. She took a deep breath and narrowed her eyes. You've been hiding this. I've been enjoying it. You're the one who decided. To poke the bear. She hesitated, glancing back at her car. Look, I'm sure we can work something out. A cooperative agreement. Joint oversight. Community access. You sent me a threat, I said flatly. You tried to fine me for floating. A boat on my own lake. That was procedural. That was arrogant. I stepped closer. Calm, clear, final. You have 4 days left to remove your club's docks. After that, I call the county and have them pulled out with a barge. Her lips tightened. Then she turned, got in her car and drove off. No wave, no apology, just the sharp crunch of tires and a woman realizing, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't the queen of anything. By Friday, word had gotten out. I didn't post anything online, but Greg, one of the quieter neighbors who always kept a fishing pole behind his shed, started spreading the news. Nate owns the lake, not the HOA, the whole damn lake. Phones lit up, the Facebook group imploded, people wanted refunds from the fishing club, demanded dues be returned, accused the board of lying, scamming, stealing. Some even begged me to keep the lake open, to just skip the board and deal with residents directly. That was tempting, but I wasn't finished yet, because Sherry still hadn't removed the docks, and she still hadn't apologized. Saturday morning, I fired up my outboard and motored across the lake. A red tool bag sat beside me. Inside, bolt cutters, zip ties, a printed copy of my deed, and 8 laminated notices that read, "Private property. Unauthorized structures will be removed. Lake access is revoked for HOA-administered groups. Contact the owner to request individual use permits." Tied off at the largest floating dock, the one where Sherry's Golden Reel Fishing Club held tournaments and posed for photos in matching khaki vests, and stapled the notices to every post. 2 residents watched me from their back patio, with coffee mugs and wide eyes. I tipped my hat. The docks were poorly maintained anyway. Cheap wood, half-rotted panels, fraying ropes. The kind of slapdash installation someone builds fast, expecting no one to question the right to be there. But I was questioning it, and I had paperwork to back me. By noon, I'd hit every illegal structure, clipped every stray mooring rope, and marked 3 unmanned boats with bright red tape. By dusk, the HOA's group chat was in full-blown crisis mode. Does anyone know why the lake docks have signs? My kayak is missing. Who moved it? Just found out the HOA never owned the lake. Nate Hale bought it years ago. Refunds. Now. That night, Greg texted me 3 words. They're losing it. On Sunday, the sheriff knocked on my door. Not because I was in trouble, but because someone had filed a noise complaint over my unauthorized removal of community property. Sheriff Dalton stood on my porch, reading the report with a smirk. Just need to ask, any truth to you evicting the HOA from the lake? Absolutely, I said, handing him a folder. He skimmed it, raised his eyebrows. Can't argue with. This, he said, you've got full riparian ownership. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. Didn't stop them from trying to fine me for parking my boat. He laughed. Sounds like they picked the wrong guy. Sounds like they picked the wrong lake. He nodded. Mind if I fish sometime? Only if you don't wear a khaki vest. That Monday, Sherry finally cracked. She called me personally. No email, no clipboard, no smug smile. Just a tired voice and a hesitant tone. Nate, I think we got off on the wrong foot. No, I replied. You got off on the wrong dock. A pause. I want to make things right. Then tear up every fine you ever issued based on false lake authority. Refund every club member. resign, if from the board, and maybe I'll consider a single community kayak permit next season. She exhaled like someone breaking under the weight of her own reflection. I'll think about it. I'm not waiting, and I hung up. That afternoon, I filed a formal trespass notice with the HOA's legal rep. Next came the invoices. Each dock, $500 removal fee, each unauthorized mooring, $250 club activities, $3,000 estimated back rent for commercial use of private property. Total bill, $7,250. Due in 30 days, with interest. By the end of the week, the HOA's emergency meeting looked more like a public trial. It was held in the community clubhouse, but instead of lemonade and printed agendas, there were raised voices, folded arms, and a dozen furious residents demanding explanations. I didn't attend, but Greg recorded the whole thing and sent me the highlights. Sherry tried to spin it, claimed she had assumed the lake was part of the shared community trust, that she believed the developer had promised transfer of rights, but no one was buying it anymore. One resident shouted, "You charged us for permits to fish in a lake we didn't even own." Another, "You threatened my husband with fines because he launched a canoe on someone else's property." A third woman stood shaking with emotion. "You made my son cry when you took away his fishing pass. You humiliated people for years. And now we find out you were never in charge at all." Sherry tried to regain control, but control was gone, and once people saw through the illusion, the HOA wasn't an authority anymore. It was a joke. Later that night, Sherry emailed me. This time, the subject line wasn't aggressive. It just said, "Surrender. Mr. Hale, the board has voted to dissolve the Golden Reel Fishing Club effective immediately. All floating docks are scheduled for removal by the end of the week. We will no longer dispute your ownership of Misty Shores Lake. Please consider voiding the invoice you sent the HOA. We are unable to pay. Sincerely, Sherry Hollowell, former HOA president." I printed it, framed it, and posted a photo of it on my new community bulletin board, located right next to the boat launch I'd just finished rebuilding with my own 2 hands. The mood in the neighborhood shifted fast. Some residents who'd been blindly loyal to the HOA apologized to me in person. One man even dropped off a thank you card that simply said, "Thanks for standing up when we didn't know how." I started seeing more families near the shoreline, fewer khaki vests, more kids, more laughter, no clipboards, no rules nailed to tree trunks, just quiet, respectful enjoyment of a place that was finally free from bureaucracy and fines. Then came the moment I didn't expect. One evening, as I was loading gear into the pontoon, I saw Sherry walking along the far trail, alone. No entourage, no heels. She stopped at the dock, hands in her coat pockets, and looked out over the lake. After a moment, she said, "You did what you had to." I didn't answer. She continued, "I thought I was protecting something." "You were controlling it," I said. A pause, then quietly, "Maybe I didn't know the difference." She turned to leave, but not before adding, "Take care of it. The lake, I mean. It deserves someone who actually understands it." I nodded. She walked away and never came back. Summer arrived early that year. The water warmed faster than usual, the fish were biting like mad, and the neighborhood had never felt more alive. But this time, it wasn't under HOA banners or fishing. The club flags, it was simple. Natural Free. Kids ran barefoot along the new trail I'd cut around the east shoreline. Parents carried folding chairs and coolers down to the dock. A young couple even got engaged on the North Peninsula during sunset. I didn't charge fees, I didn't hand out passes, I just asked one thing: respect the lake. And they did. Not because they were told, but because they chose to. The Misty Shores HOA disbanded entirely 2 months after Sherry's resignation. No one stepped up to replace her. No one mourned its collapse. In its place, the neighbors formed a simple stewardship committee, not to enforce but to assist. Trash pickups, shared lawn tools, neighbor-to-neighbor support, real community stuff, the kind that can't be run with fines or bylaws, and for the first time in years, nobody feared a letter on their porch. As for me, I built a second dock, smaller. It tucked in a quiet bend near the lily pads and added a hand-carved wooden bench facing the water. On the back of the bench, I burned a few words into the wood with a soldering iron, owned by deed, shared by heart. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about keeping what was good, what mattered, out of the hands of people who'd forgotten the point. Greg and I still fish every other weekend. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just sit in silence and listen to the ripple of water, the chirp of frogs, the flap of birds skimming the surface, and every so often I glance down at the rope tied to my pontoon, snug and still on the dock they once tried to tell me I wasn't allowed to use. Then I smile, because in the end they didn't just lose the lake, they lost the illusion of control. And I got to remind an entire neighborhood what real ownership and real freedom looks like.